All right, it shows that we're recording. We'll keep our fingers crossed.
Okay. Opening remarks. You'll note that the failure of the Texas grid is on the agenda. As I last checked, they've now counted 80 deaths that are related to that cold snap grid failure. What I want to do just remind everybody is the safety aspect of the business we're in and what we do. Was reported there was the trench failure where the truck drove into two people into the trench, causing 2 fatalities in Boston. Today in Cambridge, there was another construction accident, a fatality, 1 fatal, 1 critical, and a stairway collapse. The other day, we saw the staging blown off a building, and we were lucky no one got hurt there. I'm sure there'll be more on the trench accident when OSHA reports on it. There was very little in detail on that accident, so I suspect much more will come out. And as we trench almost daily in our business, we'll commit to following up on that. I have no other comments. Are there any other commissioners that have comments?
So I can provide a quick update on the Green Communities meeting that we had. So we're moving forward with setting up the utility data that will provide the foundation for the energy consumption and reduction plan. And so we're going to use a tool I believe called Mass Energy Insight. So the utility will upload data, basically it's monthly data by meter, I believe, or customer account meter number into the tool for both electricity and natural gas. And then the DPW will add oil, gasoline, diesel, and any other fuel that they're using on their end to that tool. And then we'll have a comprehensive picture for all municipal. So this is restricted to municipal government assets. So that's town vehicles and town buildings only. So we have a comprehensive picture of energy use on an annual basis for those assets. Our baseline year is going to be, I believe, fiscal year 2019. So that's going to be mid 2018 to mid 2019. And then going forward, it'll be fiscal year periods every single year. So that's moving forward. If anyone has questions, I'll keep you posted, or just feel free to reach out.
And I don't know if everybody knows that. So once we have that baseline year, part of being a green community is that you're committing to reductions in major areas, including municipal buildings. So that baseline year will be used as we compare and work towards reducing energy consumption. And it's good that the baseline year is 19 and not the COVID year. We all agreed that you want to have a real year to work off of. So
was that something that we could pick? Was the baseline year, or it just happened to work out that way?
There's some flexibility, but you can't really schedule it for something that is super advantageous to you necessarily, however, they're not looking to penalize any of their new towns that are joining by picking a COVID year where energy is far lower than normal. It's very hard to get a reduction off of a year where schools weren't open for months, as an example.
Yeah. If we were, the other thing is like our streetlight replacement was the year before, so it would have been more advantageous if we had gone back an extra year, but because we would have had a significant savings on the streetlights, but it's okay. We'll have to deal with it. So.
Jem, are you done?
Yes.
Okay. Phil, I have a couple of updates, comments.
Go ahead, Tom.
First one was just for Pete around the connected homes. And I don't remember if I had mentioned it last meeting or not, the Nest and the Honeywell Homes thermostats are now eligible. Yep. But just throwing out to do some media push and solicit folks around that. I know there was some, I had emailed, I just don't remember if I had done it in the meeting or not.
Yeah, we were waiting on some information on the Nest side. Nest is being a little bit restrictive. Although they're letting us use their tool, it's restricted on how many times we can use it and in what seasons. So,
Gotcha.
so that some of the rules that are being allowed for the additional thermostats are just coming down now. I just actually got an email from Joe Coles yesterday on that. So we'll have more. We were waiting until we got some more clarifications. So Nest is restricting it to, I think it's like no more than 20 times a year. And one of them is only in summer months. One of them is year round. So there's the various thermostats are putting various caveats. So we just want to be clear on those.
Awesome. Yeah. And just to, full transparency, I, went through the process through Connected Homes and signed my Nests. I have 3 Nests and signed them up. And I actually got an email from Joe asking for some clarifying questions around, which Nests are doing heating, what the heating fuel is, and then if they're connected to a heat pump or central air conditioning. And then to your point, they do have it noted on the site that like the Nests are only for basically the summer months, and they'll be only controlling from load management AC, not heating on that aspect.
Mhm.
And the Honeywells on the site are noted year round.
Yeah.
And then I know I had emailed you, Pete, around, I had a customer reach out to me around gas pressure in Greenwood. Thank you for those updates and things. I did share that. He said, thanks. He's located on Spring Street. So I don't know, I mentioned that the Main Street project scheduled for 2022, you said would help that out. But can we validate that?
Well, we've done all the upgrades on both sides of the intersection on Main Street. The only thing left is that intersection itself. So that's probably the only constraining factor at this point, because all of Spring has been redone. All the feeders that come from the tracks, I forget what street that is, that turns and curves.
It's Greenwood, right?
Yeah, it might be Greenwood. So both sides of Greenwood have been upgraded. The only thing that's left is that section in the middle on Main Street. So
awesome. And like I said, I appreciate that. And it was a good communication back and forth between the customer and
we do measure the pressures out there, and it's better. It's not 100% yet. It's better than it was a few years ago since we've done these 2 other capital projects. So hopefully this Main Street will be the final straw to improve it completely.
Thank you.
Okay. I don't see Town Council Julie Smith Galvin.
You just joined.
Just joined. Okay. Julie, do you have any comments?
All right, sorry I'm late. I'm at work, so I have to wear my mask. No, I don't know whether Jen's already said, but both Jen and Peter have been working with us on the Green Communities Act preparation application. So appreciative of that. We have to come up with an energy baseline and then a so
Yeah, Jen did report on that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Julie, you're just breaking up a little bit. I don't know if it's your mic.
All right, I'm probably going to go off screen and just listen.
Okay, I see no one from the public to comment. We can move to approval of the minutes of the February 3rd meeting.
Before you go on there, I'd just like to give a couple of hats off to the gas service department. I had a couple of calls in this month, and they not only were professional, I was just amazed. I think it just has a reflection on the whole department. But these 2 guys, I know one of them was Victor Saviano.
Yep.
The other guy, I lost a slip of paper.
Brett Prowse.
He's probably about my age, Pete, but he was good. He
Oh,
was just,
John Davis?
he lives in Reading. That's all I
Yeah,
know.
John Davis.
Okay. But as far as being professional, on time, and in and out, it was just amazing. Go watch him.
Yeah, we're very lucky with the team in gas service right now. They've done an excellent job. John is nearing retirement, so we're beginning to plan for that as well. That job we had posted a few months ago, we're going to start to gear that new person up to eventually be in that group. He's going to start out on the street side to learn that, but eventually we got to train him up to be able to take over for John when John retires, or be in that group when John retires.
Hey, back to the minutes of the meeting. I had a couple of small ones. I'll start. Page 9, halfway down the page, it says Alan Prifty asked, and that should be Elton instead of Alan, E-L-T-O-N.
Yep.
Then on page 10, halfway down the page, Commissioner Corsi added that prior to his retirement from National Grid, he had retired 40 megawatts of diesel emergency generator unit that filled this capacity. We were talking about peaking capacity. The next sentence should read most being, and instead of in, most being replaced by larger combustion turbines. Cross out the word in and add replaced by.
Yep.
And that was all I had. Was there any other corrections?
Jen had a handful. While we're on this page, right below that sentence, peakers was spelled wrong. It's P-E-A, so we can fix that. Jen, one of the ones you had filled out with Elton.
Yes. So while we're on 10, I'll continue on from there and then we can go back to the beginning. So on page 11, there was this is the paragraph that starts Julie Smith Galvin is concerned. She is concerned that Wakefield is associated with a project built near an environmental injustice area. I just corrected it because the term is environmental justice area. So I took off the in. Also on page 11, it says the next paragraph down, Commissioner Calais commented that she liked the idea that this will not take away from our ability to invest in customer side resources. And I just corrected that to Commissioner Calais commented that she wants to be sure this will not take away from our ability to invest in customer side resources. And the last one I had is actually back on page 7. And this one's actually probably the most important one. It's in the paragraph that starts WMGLD General Counsel, the second paragraph on the page. The sentence is, she mentioned that MWEC does not have any information about this on their website and Peabody does post their meeting minutes. But I'm pretty sure that it was Peabody does not post their meeting minutes. So I just added not.
Yep.
And then there was only one other that actually I just saw that I will just raise. It's just a really confusing sentence on page 8. It's pretty much smack dab in the middle of the page. It says, as the originators of Berkshire Wind 1 and expanded Berkshire Wind 2 3 years ago, period. The sentence just doesn't make any sense. So I was wondering if it should read like WMGLD is one of the originators.
Yeah.
But so whatever it needs to be corrected to,
Yep.
just to clarify what we're talking about. And that's it.
That is correct. Let me make those edits.
Yeah, and so the only other one I offered, which is up to you, Pete, is on page 14 too, where we're talking about the your evaluation. We have the points and then it adds up to 99%, but it's just, I think it would be confusing for anyone that wasn't in that meeting because the 5548548 do not add up to 99%. So I just recommended using the percentages rather than the scores.
Yep.
But that's a minor thing, but just so it's not too confusing.
Yep.
I don't have any that weren't already called out.
Okay.
Okay, if that's it, we'll move on to old business project updates.
Did you want to vote those, Phil?
What's that?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of the February 3rd meeting with the amendments discussed.
I'll second it. Roll call vote. Commissioner Betcher,
Aye.
Commissioner Chase,
Aye.
Commissioner Corsi, aye. Commissioner Calais,
Aye.
Commissioner Washoe.
Aye.
Minutes of meeting are approved, 5-0 unanimous. Go ahead, Peter, when you're ready.
I don't know if anybody has any questions on any of the dashboards. Mark, you want to just give a 2 second? I will actually, I'll give an update on the moratorium extension and what we intended. So there was some clarification today from the DPU that we can shut off. We're not included in the extension to July 1st. And however, my recommendation is that we begin to send out our, so we could actually start as early as April 1st. My recommendation is going to be that we start sending out notices April 1st, but we don't allow any shutoffs till July 1st. But we will accelerate the communications, so to speak, by sending out the shutoff notices. Some of the munis are going to start shutting off right away in late March and early April. I'll suggest that we hold off till July 1st, but we can start sending notices for especially the people that have been ignoring us and not setting up payment plans. So.
Oh, so this is, just so I understand, because the word moratorium threw me off. This is essentially the disconnection and account termination for individuals that have not paid their bills for how long of a period of time?
So it varies, but I mean, the customers, we usually review it in terms of dollars owed and time of non-payment. Because you
Okay.
could have,
What are the thresholds? Sorry, what are the thresholds for each of those?
so there's, Mike, you want to?
So sure. So I mean, in practice, it's the way that the code is written. So it's 60 days. So if you're 60 days past due, we can terminate. And that's for even $1. We don't do it at $1. We do have accounts like what Pete was saying, it depends on the age of the account and the absolute balance. So we have customers who, for whatever reason, they go out of town or whatever, and they have a $6 minimum bill or something like that. And they, so they owe us $50 or something like that. And it could have accumulated over 12 months. Those are the ones that we get to them when we get to them. Normally what we target first is 500 and over, and it's going to be 90 days.
But just to, the DPU rules are that after 30 days, then a 15-day late notice can go out. And after the 15 days are over, then a final 72-hour shut-off notice has to go out.
Right.
That's technically.
Yeah. So we ballpark it at 6. So it's 60 days is what we ballpark it at. So we start there, and usually by the time we get through the process, Jack, It's actually, it actually takes us 15 days plus 72. It's normally 15 days plus another 10 days. So it's normally almost another month. In practice, it's bumping up against 90 days by the time we get there. So, but that's in a I guess that's in a non-COVID environment. So we're going to be dealing with some more delinquent than normal. That's just the nature of the beast right now. So, and we're going to go for oldest and absolute dollar amount first. That's what we focus on.
But
So
Mark,
again,
let me make sure I
Governor
understand.
issued a statement that the IOUs, he's extending it from April 15th to July 1st. And so, but we are, it was clarified with the DPU today that we're not part of that. We could start shutting off earlier. But my recommendation is that we stay with the July 1st date from shut off perspective, but we will accelerate our notices.
So by the time July 1st rolls around, we're ready. Yeah, we're ready to go.
Right, Mark, let me make sure I understood what you said. So you're saying that the way you do it is after you do a 15-day notice and a 72-hour notice, and then you said something about 10 days? I just want to make sure.
Sure. No, normally,
Yeah,
Jack.
I just want to make sure that what you're saying is once the 72-hour notice goes out, you don't go beyond 72 hours.
Correct. We're not, that's correct. We don't say the 3-day notice and then show up a week later. No, that doesn't happen. Once it's 3 days, it's 3 days. We also, on occasion, Jack, what we've done is we've given double 3-day notices because we don't terminate in the rain. So if it's pouring out that day, we're not gonna send a person out to pull a meter off the side of that. It's just not gonna happen. It's not safe. So there's instances, again, in a perfect world, you're right on the money. But what I'm saying is there's instances where it can trickle over.
Okay.
In which case we issue another 72-hour notice.
Okay.
Yeah. Does that help?
Yeah, no, that's good, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, just so the others know, that 72-hour notice doesn't mean that you'll be shut off in 72 hours. It means you'll be shut off within 72 hours.
Correct. Yep.
We also have, we obviously don't shut off on Fridays, Saturdays, or Sundays. We
Holidays.
usually don't shut off at the beginning of the week, Monday or Tuesday either, because you want to make sure that anybody that dropped off a payment or put it in the Dropbox or sent it to Century Bank, anything that came in over the weekend gets processed. So really our shut off days are Wednesdays and Thursdays.
And Thursdays, we usually talk for Thursdays because it's our long day in the office. And if somebody were to be terminated for non-payment, they come home from work at 5 o'clock or something like that. The office is still open. It could be dealt with at that point on a late day Thursday. So that helps too. But that's the process that we've been using for as long as I've been around, as long as Pete's been around. So, and it seems to work. It's not, believe me, it's the most distasteful part of my job is when it happens. It's the last thing that anybody wants to do, but it's part of the process. So,
So is
and
the
again,
threshold the same for residential and commercial customers? The 500?
commercial. So commercial was left out of the moratorium type discussion, but in practice, we don't terminate in the winter, especially electricity when it's really, really cold. We don't want to own somebody's pipes freezing, things like that. We don't, that's not what we want to do. But we're not
I'm sorry.
from shutting off.
Let me just preface, Mark, so that Jen and the others know, the DPU does not have regulations around termination of service for commercial customers. So it's up to the utility.
Right, for non-residential. So, but again, in practice, we don't want to own somebody's building if God forbid the pipes break or something like that. That's just not right. So we don't do that. We don't do the, in very, I won't say never, but in very, very limited circumstances, we've done it, so.
So we don't terminate a CNI customer is what you're saying?
In the winter when it's cold, there's no hard and fast date. So it's driven primarily by the weather.
Okay, so now that I'm thoroughly confused, I have a question because there's a lot of different, there's like DPU and WMGLD. Will you be writing this policy down somewhere so it could be transparent to everyone?
We could
And will
post,
you, okay,
my suggestion was we could post the DPU language on the website, you know, the CMR, I forget the 2502, something like that. We could post that language on the website because that's Massachusetts Code, Massachusetts regulation. So, and that, you know, that would give our customers, at least residential anyway, the, you know, the information. So as far as commercial goes, again, we don't have the DPU doesn't dictate a policy. So we don't really have a written, there's nothing written that we have right now on that.
But again, we use the aging and the whole dollar amount
Right.
as the guides.
Right.
Has anyone ever pushed back on us not having a policy?
We have the state regs, so we push back to that. We far exceed any criteria in the state regs, so if they're pushing back, they would be pushing back against the state regulations. The only place they can complain is the DPU.
No, on the CNI where there is no regulatory from the DPU. I'm just concerned with not having a policy. Someone, you know, potentially could be like, well, you know, you shut off, you know, X, Y, and Z CNI customer at this point, and then you shut me off at this point.
So they get the notices, which are consistent. So they get the 60-day notices. So there is consistency to that. But we also try to work with you, obviously.
Absolutely.
As I've
And that's
said
the
many times before, the people that get shut off are the people that don't call us back. If you ignore us, you're going to end up getting shut off. If you work with us, you're going to keep your lights on.
Right. And that's one of the advantages that, you know, as a municipal utility, I'm sure National Grid somewhere in, or I shouldn't say National Grid, an investor on utilities somewhere in their book of whatever they do for CNI, they do have a hard and fast regulation. And when you click 1 inch over that threshold, you're done, you're it. Now, I like to have the flexibility where I can work with a couple of customers when I need to. And if we had those regs in place, especially during COVID, and there's other times when, you know, the economy has hit the skids, and if we had those regs in place, and I said, I went back to the reg and, you know, the policy of WMGLD, and it said, you know, this is the policy, sorry, you're done. I'd like to have the flexibility to not have to point to something on a piece of paper, because that way there is, you know, that give and take. And I can say to a customer, again, like what Pete was saying, if you work with me, we're going to work with you. But, you know, that I guess what I'm saying, Tom, is that could go either way. That could work to the detriment of if you have a hard line, that could work to the detriment of the customer as well.
Understood. Yeah, no, well, you know, I totally appreciate and the flexibility in giving you guys that. And I think we are, you know, very tolerant and, you know, working in the best interest of the customer. My only concern is those where it would cut the other way, that they could use our flexibility against us. And was more of where I was coming at, is the concern of, you know, we being a good, you know, call it a good partner, a good municipality provider, that someone taking advantage of that goodwill and good nature.
Yeah, I guess I would feel a lot more comfortable with something written down. And I think you can write in the kind of flexibility that you're talking about, which is to say, if a customer contacts me between, you know, this time and this time, then that would be, you know, consideration, then you would be removed from termination, or, you know, So I think it could be worked in, but I'm also concerned that without this, there is and I know you're not like this, Mark, or no one is like this, but there'd be the thought that there could be bias, right? That there could be bias against an individual, bias against for any number of reasons. And I'm a little concerned about that, that perception, that's all.
I've got another point of view. Anytime that you create a system, you create the ability for people to game that system. That's if we put down something in writing that we don't need in writing, and we lose our ability to negotiate, next thing we'll have commercial customers playing with their payments.
I think that we've kept it like this because the regulation is what the DPU dictates. So we follow the regulation. And I think that if we get pushed, we're going to point to the regulation. And I think we, as Jack was citing, we have to send notices at certain times. I think the fact that we far exceed that is beneficial, and it gives Mark and Sylvia a lot of flexibility. But I think if we put additional criteria on it, it's only going to be held against us. So I'd rather just say, we follow the criteria of the state, and, we strongly encourage customers to contact us if they're having difficulty paying,
I mean, that would be fine. That sounds like it meets what I'm talking about. And I think that putting that online or in the paper or whatever as a heads up that this is coming, which I'm sure you're going to do, would be helpful. I'm just being more sensitive about it given the economic environment that we're in right now.
And we've had a couple of press releases on that since COVID started, strongly encouraging folks to reach out and contact us. I think we put it on Facebook. I know we had at least one press release on it early on, and we'll start reminding people again.
And I just see it as a way more of a protection for the utility. So someone can't, use our flexibility against us. And that's more of the angle I'm coming at it from, is protection for you guys, that, to Jen's point, that someone couldn't say there's bias, and you can, point to a policy saying that, there isn't bias here because we are following this. That's written down and has been, communicated and available.
Cool. Anything else you want to talk about on the 30/60/90 stuff, Mark?
So actually, we kind of skipped. We had a full agenda last month. So just if there's any questions on it, the one that's and what Peter's talking about, page 19, 20, and 21 of the packet. So it's this chart. And one of the things I think that I wanted to mention, at least, that I think deserves looking at, graphically anyway, is, so when we look at this chart, over here on the 2021 side of the chart, if we look at it, the trend isn't getting any worse. The trend is getting better. So, I mean, and I kind of did that, green, yellow, red trend. So, granted, when you compare the 4 months that I put down on the chart against 2019 and 2018, the aging has deteriorated. There's been some degradation of the quality of the receivables, but the trend, the recent trend, when you go, October, November, December, January, the trend seems to be going in the right direction. So we look at it. We continue to look at it. We continue to monitor it, and we continue to work like we was, the methodology that we just talked about. We continue to work the receivables. We continue to work with the customers. So,
and I think it's in our best interest politically to say that even though we're not required to follow the state request to extend the moratorium until July 1st, we're one of the munis that are. There are several munis today that commented that they're not going to follow that. They're going to begin collecting immediately. A lot of the smaller ones that are having significant financial difficulties right now because their tables don't look as good as ours. So, yeah. But we do have that flexibility. So we'll follow the guideline of the extension until July 1st. One other thing to note, and that was brought up today in our discussions with other managers, was that the IOUs right now are anticipating some support from the state or the federal government in terms of, lost money, stuff that they're not going to be able to collect, whether they collect it in their rate base or get some kind of federal aid for it. We're not included in those discussions at this point. So, but if we are, that helps. But right now, the muni world has not heard anything that we're being included in those discussions. So, although they're extending their moratorium till July 1st out of the goodness of their hearts, they're expecting to see some money for it on the backside. So.
Do around that is MWEC and ENE, are they, have a seat at the table or attempting to get a seat at the table if we don't, in terms of those discussions
Yeah,
around
to the
that,
extent we
or
can.
collectively for the munis?
Yep. So, I don't know.
Can I just ask one more question? Is it electric and gas combined for these
Yeah.
numbers? Okay.
Correct, that's correct.
And actually, over the we look at the total bill. We've only shut off a handful of gas services since I've been here over 15 years. And most of those have been because customers wouldn't let us in to change their meter. Where we've, tried over extended periods of time, at least usually more than a year late on changing, and they still won't give us access. And that's when we just cut it in the street. So most of the gas services that I've shut off since I've been here haven't been for non-payment. It's been for failure to provide access to a meter, which is, and in those cases we're shutting them off and then we're moving the meter outside. So, and there's only, like I said, been less than a handful of those cases in my 15 years. Anything else on that? On the new construction report, just a note that we anticipate there's planning underway in various states of progression on various projects totaling over 1,000 units coming up. And those are all going to be electric heat of some sort, whether it's heat pumps or whatever, thanks to our moratorium on gas connections. So that's a lot of units. I mean, if we grow our customer base by 1,000 over the next 2 to 3 years, and all of those are electric, that's a significant step forward in the ultimate goals. In terms of COVID updates, knock on wood, we've still been very lucky in terms of everybody staying healthy and following rules. We do see some backtracking occasionally, and it involves me going around, and as they call me, a few of the guys call me Dr. Fauci. So I keep showing up at job sites and reminding people to, but I think it's important because even though the vaccines are getting out there, and the numbers are dropping, we're not out of the woods yet. It's going to take a few more months of forward progress before we can all feel a little bit better. But I don't see the mask mandate for our folks going away anytime soon. And again, we've tried to keep people as separate as possible. And I think for the most part, people are pretty used to it, and they're doing a good job. We did have 2 guys go up to Merrimack yesterday afternoon for a mutual aid for the storm. The mutual aid requirements have changed since COVID in terms of 2 vehicles. Nobody rides together in trucks. If people do need to stay over anywhere, they're required to provide them with separate rooms. In the case of Merrimack, we didn't need to, but so there's been some changes around mutual aid as well around COVID, and I don't see those changing real soon either. But the north area of the systems kind of got beat up a little bit with the cold and windstorm the other day. So we did send mutual aid to Merrimack yesterday.
Were the folks scheduled for the COVID vaccination able to get that before our local site was shut down? I know you mentioned that we were on the list.
We had a number of people got their first shots on Friday.
Okay, good.
So we're progressing, keeping our fingers crossed that everybody is able to get their second shot, and we'll keep our fingers crossed. And we thank Todd and Tom Walsh for that. They were helpful in getting us in. When they realized there were extra shots, we were able to get a number of people over there to get shots on Friday. The National Grid project is, we've begun doing dig safe markouts, and they're going to be gearing up, and it will be restarting over the next couple of weeks. So you will see United Civil reappearing in Wakefield over the next couple of weeks. They'll probably be staging first and getting remobilized. Again, we're refreshing all our dig safe stuff for the areas they're going to be working, and we should expect to see them back probably no later than April 1st in full bore. The McGrail project, I'm not sure if people saw it. The transformers have gone away, so we pulled all the wire out, and the site is already looking a little bit better. The ongoing work is on the 13.8 side now, converting the 13.8 circuits that are in the outdoor gear, that tan building. Those are gradually being converted over, and then we'll be removing that building from the site as well. So that project that Vinny and Paul Redmond talked about a couple months ago is still progressing, and they should be wrapping up this summer. From the climate bill perspective, it's gone a little bit quiet. So if you remember, what happened was right before the end of the session on January 5th, the legislature passed it and sent it to the governor. He pocket vetoed it and sent back comments. As soon as they returned on January 20th, within that first week, they resubmitted the same bill basically, and the governor basically took more or less the same action. He sent it back formally with comments, and it's gone back to the Telecommunications, Utilities, and Energy Environmental Subcommittee. What happened next, though, was that all those committee assignments, because of the change in the new session of the legislature, all the committee assignments changed. So the first thing that happened was all the bodies started moving around. So the people on that committee were changed. So they're just probably now getting back into it. There are new faces on the Energy Committee right now on both the House and the Senate side. So there'll probably be a slight education curve first. But the expectation is that they'll try to work with the administration on some of the concerns that were raised. And hopefully, relatively quickly, the bill will be re-engaged, and hopefully we can get it finalized. I believe in our discussions with the speaker, he is interested in trying to deal with some of the governor's major concerns. And hopefully they can get to a resolution and get the bill signed. As I've noted, the issues on the table have nothing to do with our stuff. So we're expecting that there shouldn't be edits to our stuff when and if the bill gets passed. We're coming up on a year on the electric vehicle, the public chargers, and Tom requested that. I think, is it the 23rd, Tom? We're on the agenda for the town council.
I don't know. Julie might have that. I didn't look at their agenda.
I'll check into it, but it was basically it's been more or less a year since we were able to finish getting the public chargers in, so it was a good time to take a snapshot and take a look. At the same time, Joe had a little bit of time, so we had him look at our residential charging program as well. So there's a great deal of information in there that we shared. I had to add the public charger stuff. Dave was out of town a little bit, so it took me a couple extra days to pull some of the stuff together. but in general, there's a lot of information about both the public and private charging programs. Jason, who runs the scheduled charging or the residential side of it, prepared a very detailed report. All in all, I think it's the program is going very well. Obviously, he caveated it with it was a COVID year, which dramatically affected overall usage, but he provided an economic analysis as well as a look at emissions reductions, some of the key metrics in terms of kilowatt hour sales from that side, quantities of just how it looks in terms of kilowatt hours by days of the week, samples of various customers and what they look like. So I don't know, does anybody have any questions on the residential side? There was one other graph that we had Joe put together. I'm going to share my screen. And it was just one of the, I don't know if folks remember, but one of the things when Mark and I looked at the residential side a little over a year ago, we noted that there was a great variety of, the customers that have the chargers. Some, their usage has gone up, some the usage has gone down, some it stayed the same, so it's varied greatly. And this graph that Joe put together, he had a very detailed analysis of each customer and what they look like. But he pulled together, I don't know if you could see the color-coded table that is on my screen. But he looked at every customer that had a charger that we've given him, all the residentials. 9 of them had less than 3 months of data, so we considered it not valid data. 5 had decreased usage. Of those, he looked at the fact that there was COVID impacts, as well as I think he said 2 had solar as well. So their usage dropped overall. There were 4 that's usage increased by 10%, 3 that the usage increased 11 to 25%, 5 the usage increased from 25 to 50, and then 4 increased from 50 to 100, and 1 more than that. So again, that supports the kind of the information that we had from our kind of primitive look at it a year and a half ago. It's that it varies greatly. So it's hard to say that, each charger, although it adds kilowatt hour sales, it also might have not necessarily a dramatic impact on the load that's added per household because of other things that take place. So it is a little bit varied. So and I thought the information was, was kind of interesting. We were able to crunch all the numbers from each customer. And so I thought that was useful to take a look at. So again, this pertains to the customer side, the residential chargers. We give away, if a customer purchases an electric vehicle, they can apply for a level 2 charger from us. They have to have their electrician pick it up. They get it for free, and it's, and then, but they have to commit to participating in the EV load management program that is run by MWEC on that side.
So Pete, this report's great. I truly appreciate it. It's very detailed. One thing that, just as a suggestion, maybe for bringing to town council around the public chargers, just some information maybe around average length of charge, especially for the Lincoln Street, to kind of show, you do have these drivers coming in, staying for a period of time, and that, time is, maybe can be associated with economic activity around that. I think that might be valuable information for them. And then maybe just even around, the Civic Center and the vets as well.
Yeah.
To kind of show the different, utilization of those chargers.
One of the graphs that's available, I think it only breaks it down into low, medium, and high, which is less than 3 hours, over
Yeah.
3 to 6, or so I'll see if there's another level of granularity on that, because right now our current charges for the past year, basically the highest percentage is 3 hours or less. There are very few that stay there beyond the 3 hours, but I can see if
Good,
there's
because that's the parking. I don't think you're supposed to be there more than 2 hours anyway.
So I don't know if there's more granularity on that, but I'll look at what the data shows if there's a way to see it in terms of length of charge.
Yeah. And so, in the dashboard you give us is the, average session length, which is great. And then I think what is potentially important for the town council is, which I actually think is a really good number, is a 3-minute idle. So that is showing that the drivers are not staying that much longer after their vehicles are done charging, which is the behavior that you ultimately want to drive with EV customers, is park, charge, and then once your charge is complete, move on.
Yep, free it up for the next person.
Can I just add to, I think one question we'll get is whether we set the pricing correctly. And so really, we're just trying to cover our costs. And so if there's any way to show that the pricing allows us to cover our costs, that would be helpful.
So yeah, to that point, Julie, so you basically, if you look at the report, it was more or less broke even this year, but there is an added cost coming in next year. So there's 2 new costs that are coming in next year. The first is the renewal of the network interconnection with ChargePoint, and the second is the extended warranty. We're going to pick up the extended warranty because it makes sense to. We've already had a couple of damages that were covered under the 1-year warranty. So looking at that, we can expect that. So we're going to cover the warranty, but the town is going to have to collect another $1,700 a year for the network connection. All in all, I don't think that it's, I think if we continue to see increased usage, it'll probably more than cover it. We probably don't need to change it, but we'll take a look at that. My recommendation probably is, since 1,600 probably won't break the bank, maybe hold it for a little while longer and see if the increased usage helps to cover that, because we more or less broke even this year. But that was counting several months at the beginning where it was, it wasn't making any profit at all to offset overheads. Because at the beginning it was, as soon as we finished them, we went right into the beginning of COVID. So.
And I do think
Thanks.
you are going to see increased usage out there. The data of just more vehicles, electric vehicles being purchased. I mean, even your data where you just showed the graph of 9 new residential chargers were installed in the last 3 months.
Yeah, we would buy 6 at a time, and it would last us several months. And Sylvia just had to buy a dozen because of the demand. All the ones she had in her office are gone, and we ordered 12 more because it is growing rapidly now.
Yeah, so these reports were so helpful, and actually the residential one is fantastic. The only things I would add to it is I don't think anywhere in this it says how many customers the analysis covers. And so I think it was 31 or whatever. So I would just add that piece of information if it doesn't appear in here.
On the residential one?
Yeah. And then the only other thing is there isn't really just a succinct summary of what the offering is for customers. So I feel it's kind of appears further back under key metrics, where it says as a reminder, MWEC, sheds EV charge. So I mean, somewhere it should just say up front, this is a free, $60 value level 2 charger in exchange for signing a contract that curtails usage between 5 and 9 p.m. or something like that.
Right.
just so people know what the program design is upfront.
Can add to that.
But
So
it's great, very helpful.
that's a lot of I tried to pull the representative slides of so ChargePoint has, dozens of charts and graphs, but you try to glean out the most pertinent information. So
No, I do. To that point, I think the report that you gave us is great. The dashboard that we get in our packet is definitely informative and helpful. So I think I'll look at the data a little bit further, but if we continue on the second half of the year run rate, and I know the town wants to break even, if we kind of model the second half of the year going forward for a full year, and that covers the $1,680, we'll probably recommend that they hold the pricing constant. Is that a new fee, or is it just a fee, like as a new customer, they don't charge you that fee for the first year?
We covered it for the first year, but it's an annual fee. So
Okay.
it's part of the ChargePoint network. So that shows it on the maps and everything. That's to be part of their system. And the warranty information, that $4,100 a year is that's a 5-year warranty extension. So that's money based on the cost of fixing stuff. If it breaks, that's money well spent.
Agreed.
Yeah, so now we have a reports about a really weird year. So hopefully we'll see a normal year at some point.
Yeah, I'm hoping that the consistency of the later part of the year into the beginning of this year will start to show.
Yeah.
It was literally, I think we turned the third one on like the 3rd of March, and then the world caved in 2 weeks later. So.
Yep.
So I don't know if anybody has any other questions on that, but we'll get clarification on exactly when we'll talk to the board. And we can tighten the slides up and everything and make it a more PowerPoint version for the town. But I included more data in this one for you guys.
I have one question. It's, inside not around the report, but, ChargePoint sells those chargers, home chargers. If someone wanted to enroll them in the program, could they? I know there's a connected homes one as well, that were, chargers that were acquired outside of our program.
That would be the method for them to join us, because the first 3, is it 3 years, Sylvia?
It's 3 years.
First 3 is through the charger program, and then we asked them to continue on with the connected homes.
Will we be enrolling those automatically, or is that still something that the customer is going to have to do?
I think we're hoping to, but I think they need to buy into it. So I think we do have to have a communication with them. And we're hopeful that, the team of people that are buying these, I'm assuming that they would. Connected homes adds an additional value. It's, you can either keep using it on your own and not get anything out of it, or if it is used in this way, then you can get an extra 5 or 10 or whatever you qualify for in connected homes. Any other questions on that? The other agenda item we had was just kind of a discussion of the Texas, issue. Obviously, and Phil mentioned at the beginning with regards to the safety, but obviously there's many layers of what happened in Texas. There was obviously supply issues in multiple layers. There was gas supply issues. There was generators, both steel in the ground generators and renewable generators. So there were a lot of issues that led to the problem. I tried to just state in my my paragraph just that there are things that we're similar to them in terms of our fuel mix, heavier heavy reliance on natural gas. Our renewable section of our portfolio in New England is approximately the same thing. I think they said 13% wind turbines. We are about 11% renewable, and more than half of that is wind turbines. So there's some similarities in our portfolio, but some of the differences are that we are obviously much more cold resilient than they are. The thing that concerns me that mirrored the most up here was the gas supply issue. And if we're relying on generators and our gas supply gets constrained, and it almost did in 2017 when we had that polar vortex, that's a scary proposition for the region. And so I think, that's just something that the regulators up here are going to have to look at. Again, one of the major differences between us and Texas is that ERCOT is its own entity. It's separated from other grids, other regions. It runs on its own. And the other major difference is it doesn't have a capacity market. So there's no financial penalty or incentive for them to stay, on a spinning reserve level, ready to run. And there's certainly no financial penalty in not being able to run, unlike up here, where there is a penalty. If you state you're available and you're getting a capacity payment, you need to be available. And if you're not available, there's a huge financial penalty for not being available. So our capacity market definitely makes us different than what was going on down there, where they did not have a capacity market. They just felt that on a peak day, the cost of energy, if it rose because of demand, would incent the generators to be ready. And it really wasn't incenting them to be ready for the extreme. So I think that, yeah.
What do you mean when you say ERCOT is its own entity? Because ISO New England is its own entity too.
Yes, but they're not, ERCOT is not interconnected to Western, Northern, or Eastern grids, whereas ISO New England is connected to PJM and New York ISO. So we have connections that cross boundaries. We connected to Canada. They're completely isolated. They don't bring in power from Mississippi or Alabama or Oklahoma or New Mexico. They don't bring in power from their left and their right or their north. So they truly are independent. And the reason they're independent is so that they don't fall under FEMA rules, whereas most of the rest of the ISOs are interconnected but fall under the rules of FEMA.
Okay.
So that's what made it different.
Sorry, go ahead. I had two questions. One was, how much did the gas supply in Texas impact our pricing on gas? Because I know that they are an exporter, but I don't know how much their supply makes up here, and how much them not being available to supply that impacted the markets, and how that's going to affect our rates. And then the second one was, in terms of winterization, obviously I know that our grid, we just live in a cold climate, but like our turbines winterize, or do they, if the icing conditions that happen in the extreme colds, do our turbines come down somewhat because of those cold conditions and icing conditions?
Yeah, the wind turbines are not much different than down in Texas in terms of, at a certain point in any weather extreme situation, they are locked out. So if it got to the level of icing that they saw down there, we would have looked the same. Also, another extreme scenario would be, high winds and hurricanes like the other night. The turbines would have been locked down at beyond a certain wind level. So obviously we're more susceptible to hurricanes up here. So, in those peak extremes, those turbines are shut down. So for example, as we grow over the next 20 plus years on a reliance on offshore wind, or an increasing reliance on offshore wind, if we have a hurricane rolling up the coast, you're going to lose that supply, because all those turbines are going to be shut down. They don't want, blades flying off into the ocean. So that's what happens when forecasted peak winds, those become locked. So those are just some of the things that this region's going to have to consider as we evolve and we change our power supply mix over the next 20 years. The fact that in extremes, every type of generation has certain restrictions. So we'll have to watch for that. And, again, that's why you don't get a huge capacity value from the renewables in terms of an allocation to your overall portfolio, because you can't guarantee that they're there in a given situation. So again, as we increase our reliance on offshore wind, which is going to be valuable 97% of the time, that 3% of the time that it's not going to be available is going to be, that has to be accounted for in everything else we do on our power supply.
Thank you. And then around the, how much did the, Texas gas supply impact, kind of our
The prices
pricing?
were up a little bit, but I don't have a complete analysis of it yet. We won't get our bill from Sprague. I watched the daily prices and they were up slightly, but not over the top. We didn't see any. And again, with our layered contracts, we're kind of protected a little bit more. But we never got to the extremes of the power supply portfolio. The gas prices were actually higher yesterday than they were during the Texas thing, because our weather was relatively mild during that time, or not as bad. We were milder then. But I get, for example, like I said, yesterday, that bitter cold that went through the gas prices were higher yesterday than a few of those days. And that coincided with the Texas issues.
A little bit of the Texas issue was freeze protection. They lost these outdoor units for real basic freeze protection that, we would have on our units here. Things like heat tapes on fuel lines, water lines, space heaters inside of controls. They actually lost units because the controls and pneumatics froze up and they had to take the units down. They came close to losing the entire grid. So the grid was about to collapse, supposedly within seconds and minutes, and we won't know the final outcome until ERCOT reports, and that could be months from now. But understand what's happening is you're losing capacity and the load stays at high demand. The generators ultimately go out on under frequency. So instead of running at 60 cycle, they begin to head down to 59 cycles. And what happened here in the Northeast in the blackout in the 60s, they didn't have a lot of under frequency relays that took out these units. So these large generators began to slip in within the magnetic field, the North Pole and the South Pole. And the field and the stator crashed against each other, breaking apart the anchor bolts. And at that point, you had a generator rotor that weighed several hundred tons banging around inside the stator. And then it was connected and coupled up to the turbine generators, which are turbine blades that have basically thousands of an inch clearance, and tore the turbines apart. So when that happened, it took some units years, many units months, that wound up with at least they had no oil, they had tremendous bearing failures, and Texas was close to that. And so they're going to have to do the freeze protection stuff is very simple, is very, very low tech. But where they came close to losing their grid, they're going to have to do a lot of major structural grid work that we experienced, 50, 60 years ago. More to come.
Yeah, and I think the one thing that did protect them was the improvements since the 60s, the stuff that took us down in 2005. around the transmission side of things. The relaying protection and, over and under frequency protection and those kind of relaying technologies now have improved dramatically. And so, for example, in 2005, when New York and Ohio and Pennsylvania, the whole basically East Coast except for us went down, that interconnection that we were talking about that Jack asked about at the beginning, because we were an exporter that day, we were exporting energy into New York. When we separated, we were stable because we were the exporter and not the importer that day. If we had been the importer that day, we probably would have had just as much of an issue. Thank goodness we weren't, and we were able to separate from New York and stay up, and virtually all of New England stayed alive that day. So
what these engineers are doing now is they're taking the data from all these relays that report in nanoseconds, and they can see which units trip first and the cause and effect of taking the grid down. That'll take some time.
You make a lot of good points about climate change and the comparison of benefits and costs. And so, a lot of what is going on is that climate change is now real, and we're seeing a lot more of these kind of impacts, and it's really, really costly. And it's costly in ways that we're not really factoring in a lot of cases into our investment decisions. So when you think of like property and equipment damages, which is what we were just talking about, and also when you think of in homes, pipes bursting, which happen in many, many homes, and whole homes being destroyed. When you think about economic productivity losses, so people not able to work or be productive at all because they were just focused on survival for weeks at a time. When you think about health, like stress, hospitalizations, injuries, deaths, the cost of all that is extremely high. And so, as you mentioned, it's when you think of it in that terms, it's very cost effective to do some of these measures to either avoid that or prevent it from happening in the first place.
And I think getting back to our prior discussions, over the past several months, is having a diverse portfolio that doesn't rely on a single source, but a wide variety of sources that, protect us in the short and the long term.
Yep. And the last factor that we didn't talk about that I just wanted to raise was that, because they don't often heat their homes or heat them that efficiently, they all had, effectively space heaters. And so when everybody threw on their space heaters in really cold temperatures, it resulted in huge electricity demand that was not planned for. So on the home efficiency side and home heating system side, that was not a good situation either in terms of what the demand was.
So I don't know if anybody else had any other discussion or question of that, but it's worth kind of talking about, making sure that, we're all the way. I know the early discussion at the beginning was, it was all the renewables fault, and it really wasn't. They were only about 13% of the supply at the time, but they also weren't the answer. So there's a balance there, and I think we just need to be smart as a region as we increase our use of renewables over the next 20 years. That we make sure that we're making smart decisions and making sure we have protections, because the vitality of the grid needs to be maintained throughout the entire time as we change what we look like.
Yeah, I think, with what happened in Texas is, a good lesson and a good, reference for all of us to look at for when we are talking about resiliency, how we are planning our project, and adding those things into that, and layering the protections in on all the things we do, because it not only the loss of property, but I think more importantly the loss of life that happened because utility wasn't there, and that goes to kind of like even circling back to our mission statement and around some of the stuff that we struggled with. But it is heat and electricity are basic tenets of living life, especially in cold climates, in that aspect. And so we kind of have to keep those things in mind as we, talk about policy and things that we do.
I agree. Any other questions on that stuff? The only other thing I wanted to talk about today, we probably want to go into executive session to talk about the union agreements that are up this year. So,
All right, do you want me to make a motion? Okay. Make a motion to enter into executive session to discuss union collective bargaining and then return to open session at its conclusion to report on and vote for adjournment.
I'll second.
I'm gonna stop recording now and then restart. We're officially going to go into executive
We
session.
haven't taken the vote yet.
Oh, we have to vote, yeah.
Okay. Commissioner Betcher,
Aye.
Commissioner Coursey, aye. Commissioner Chase,
Aye.
Commissioner Calais,
Aye.
Commissioner Washall.
Aye.
It votes 5-0 unanimous.
All right, I'm gonna stop recording now. Sylvia, we'll take the notes from here, so you don't have to stay for that. Appreciate
All
it.
right. All right. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks. Have a good night.
Bye. Good night.